When one experiences loss, they are essentially deprived of something or someone. Although someone appears to be functioning magnificently in society, in reality, within the confines of their home, it could be mourning. That's an excerpt from the show. Today we'll be discussing defining grief, mourning, and bereavement. And here's the intro.
Welcome to Managing My Grief, where it's all about learning to live with grief after experiencing loss. Here's your host, Miss Dilworth.
I'm glad you chose to join me for my first Managing My Grief podcast show. This discussion is on defining grief, mourning, and bereavement. Many times we hear someone use the term grief, mourn, and bereavement interchangeably. But do you really know what they mean? Grief, according to Webster's dictionary, is a deep and poignant distress caused by or as if by bereavement, while mourning's definition is to feel or express grief or sorrow, to show the customary signs of grief for a death. They may sound similar, but they are quite different. Grief can be viewed as an internal reaction after experiencing loss, such as anger, sadness, or hurt. And mourning is the outward expression of grief. For example, a child loses their parent. Inwardly, they may experience confusion and anger. That's grief. Outwardly, they may cry or become more aggressive towards peers. And that is mourning. At times, you may hear people say, they're still mourning. Or recently, someone shared with me that they haven't mourned their father's death yet because they have to focus on supporting their family. In a future show, we'll talk about the different reasons why someone may not mourn immediately after loss. For now, I want to share with you a story to see if you can identify the grief and mourning. Again, grief is internal reaction and mourning is the outward expression. Now keep in mind that sometimes mourning isn't obvious. So we're going to visit Chris. Chris is a 22-year-old who recently lost his mother. He continues attending classes and maintaining good grades in college. Chris continues spending time with his friends and seems to be functioning as well as when his mother was still living. Several weeks pass. A few of his friends notice that when they go out to eat, he doesn't eat as much. Sometimes doesn't even eat at all. His friends jokingly confront him one day, and he jokes back saying he's just trying to lose weight. As finals draw near, he dives more into studying and passes all of his classes. At graduation, relatives notice Chris's loss in weight and make a few comments on how handsome he looks. Throughout the graduation celebration, family members tell him how proud his mom would be if she were there. He oddly looks down, says thank you, and moves away to talk with other people. Were you able to pick up on the grief and mourning Chris was experiencing? The grief Chris experienced was depression. There's a difference between sadness and depression. The initial difference is the length. Sadness typically lasts no more than 2 weeks. But if someone experiences sadness consistently for 2 or more weeks, then that experience can be classified as depression. The depression Chris was experiencing was being manifested by losing his appetite and not eating as much. His method of mourning was not eating. Now, that's not to say he deliberately chose to lose his appetite. Losing his appetite was how the grief chose to manifest itself outwardly. Everyone experiences grief differently, resulting in them mourning differently, and that's okay. That's what makes us unique. On to bereavement. Bereavement is another term we may hear someone use. Oh, they're in bereavement, or many times related to work, someone may say they're gone for bereavement. Here in the US, most jobs provide a 3-day bereavement period for people to, quote unquote, deal with the death of a family member. Which, by the way, 3 days isn't long enough to deal with loss, but that's another discussion. There are some employers, however, who provide more days depending on the relationship of the deceased and the employee, which is a great thing for employers to take into consideration. Bereaved refers to one who is suffering the death of a loved one. Bereavement is the state or fact of being bereaved or deprived of something or someone. A key word to focus on in bereavement's definition is deprived. Deprived means marked by deprivation, especially in the necessities of life or of healthful environmental influences. When one experiences loss, they are essentially deprived of something or someone, which makes sense as to why grief can be so challenging to work through. One is faced with the fact that something or someone has been taken away from them. For some, they go through grief smoothly. Some avoid it altogether, and some, unfortunately, get stuck in grief. Although someone appears to be functioning magnificently in society, in reality, within the confines of their home, they could be mourning uncontrollably, crying themselves to sleep, sometimes even having suicidal thoughts. For those who know someone that's recently lost a loved one, keep in mind that the root to grief is deprivation. They are deprived of someone or something. A couple synonyms are disadvantaged and underprivileged. Going back to Chris at his graduation, as he looks at his friends hugging and celebrating with their moms, does it make sense how he could feel disadvantaged in reaching peak happiness? Thinking about the father of three who lost his wife, does it make sense how he can feel deprived and underprivileged? And for you, who's currently experiencing grief, embrace psychoeducation. It's important for you to understand what's going on with you. Not only does it give you access to a deeper understanding of self, but it gives you the language to share with others what you are experiencing. To recap, we have grief that's internal, mourning that's external, and bereavement that can be seen as related to the state of mind. To learn more about grief, come back next week to a new show. To attend a grief workshop, go to managingmygrief.net. Thank you for joining me. I hope you have a productive day and live in your greatness.